Inspiration, brave action, and heartwarming journeys. This is what the Louise H. Reed Show brings you. Now, here's your host, Louise H. Reed.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me this wonderful Tuesday. I'm your host, Louise H. Reed. With listeners in over 145 countries and with millions of iTunes downloads and ongoing podcasts, I'm the fortunate host with you every Tuesday at this time to explore the incredible journey of amazing people who've truly embraced the notion of taking brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals while doing good in the world. Really, what a powerful winning combination. So my regular listeners know I started my coaching business, Redefining Motherhood Academy, to empower and uplift women. So I am thrilled to announce for the first time a collaboration with an organization called Pearls with Purpose, a social impact organization dedicated to disadvantaged women in developing countries, where women are given a hand up rather than a hand out through micro enterprise training. So what a perfect match for me. This means that anyone who works with me in any way is part of the cycle of women empowering women around the globe. So each of us really can make a difference. So more about that in upcoming episodes, but I couldn't wait to share that news with you, my loyal listeners. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find information about me, my amazing guests like Erin Leslie, who is on with us today, about my academy, and soon Pearls with Purpose will be there too, on my website, louisehreed.com. Now, before we hear from our guest today, Erin Leslie, let me tell you a little bit about her. So Erin is a leadership coach and the founder of EQFootprints. She demonstrates to her clients the assets they bring to their careers, more specifically, harnessing emotional intelligence practices. Erin teaches others how to foster high-performing groups, develop personal branding, grow individual careers, and enhance business problem solving. On a more personal note, Erin moved from Toronto in 2014 from Montreal, where she was born and raised. Recognizing that her network in Montreal was there, Erin strived to build a meaningful network in Toronto in 2016 and quickly amassed over 900 new connections through her networking abilities and relentless drive to meet interesting people across the greater Toronto area and beyond. Now, as a leadership coach, Erin enables professionals to achieve their career aspirations through personal development planning and coaching at EQFootprints. I really love this piece about Erin is that she believes that every career could benefit from mentorship. She hates to see anyone get stuck, not knowing the right actions that will propel them towards their next success. So welcome to the show, Erin.
Thank you, Louise. Thanks for having me today.
My absolute pleasure. There are so many interesting aspects of you, your career, and your journey that I really look forward to exploring over this next hour that we have together. My first question for you is, you're a leadership coach, among other things, but you're a leadership coach. I'm sure that when you were a little girl, you didn't grow up saying, I want to be a leadership coach. So I'd like to just kind of start there and understand, what did you want to be when you were a little girl? And then let's start to uncover how you got to where you are now.
Thanks. That is a good question. It's always interesting to look back on our childhood and see where we've grown from. And quite honestly, growing up quite quickly in my young years, I realized that I wanted to connect with people and I wanted to be a psychologist. And my passion was to help people understand their bodies, their minds, and to be free of the guilt or the pain or the concerns that the world weighs on them through their young years, and they continue to carry as baggage, literally suitcases, as they go through life. So that was my initial thought as a young person, is like, yeah, I want to help people through psychology.
Which is really interesting. I find that an interesting question really to ask anyone. We ask young children all the time, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then, at some point we stop asking that. And I like to think that at any point in your life, you can decide what you want to be when you grow up. There is no end to that. which is what I think is also interesting in what you do, because it allows that sort of self-discovery and that journey to continue, that it doesn't sort of end.
Exactly.
There may be an end for one particular, chapter, but it doesn't end. It doesn't end there. You can start a new chapter. So I think that was pretty insightful, actually. If you go back to look at little Erin, that was pretty insightful stuff to have at that age. So tell us a little bit about how you started on that journey, and then what forks in the road then took you down a different kind of path.
Yeah, I think I realized very early on that the world was a different place in terms of how you learn, what institutions mean to different people and learning skills. And so I decided to go out in the world and figure out what I wanted to do, what interests me, how I connected with people, and then go back to school and figure out education-wise what I was looking to do. And so I ended up always working in customer service, always being connected to people, always networking. It's kind of this common theme as being an extrovert growing up. And where I actually landed was being in touch with technology and having a certain desire around languages. I saw technology as another language and another way of expressing. So I decided to go into technology and become literally the person who sits in the back server room, wearing the dirtiest clothes possible, because at any time you could end up in the ceiling installing and laying cables.
Yeah.
So that was me in the early days. And then I moved on into consulting and worked with client partnership management and really establishing, from a technology standpoint, what are clients' needs, what are they looking for, and how do we deliver it better? And then eventually moved into client relationship management. So it's this common theme of customer service and providing the best experience has always been there.
And it's fascinating. And I can't actually picture you in that back server room, because knowing you and that extroversion, that is surprising. But I think that's what's so neat to explore about our own personalities and our own preferences, is that it really does show up in a variety of forms. Mm-hmm. So I want to go back to something that you mentioned, which is interesting. You went out into the world first to play a little out there before you then decided to go to school. I imagine that took a bit of courage to do that. If I reflect back on my own journey, that wasn't something that was an easy thing to do when I went, when I graduated from high school in 1993, that wasn't an easy thing to do, to go against the grain, which at that time, following the grain would be going to university or college immediately after graduating. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about how that went in terms of, I'm sure there were parents or some sort of guardian involved at that point. How did that kind of conversation go?
I think in terms of being an extrovert comes with, and being the youngest of 4 siblings, I'm a bit of a rebel. So I clearly was that child that no matter what the parents were indicating, they also were indicating that you could explore and you could have options. And as long as you did it in a way that didn't hinder you, that, you could be free to explore that. And a little bit of it was, just letting the adult be. We're clearly adults by the time we're 14, 15. And it's hard, I imagine, for parents to allow their children to move in spaces that are not the norm. But I fortunately had the parents that allowed me that freedom, because I think that's where I got the understanding that it's okay to fail. Right. And you will succeed as a result of all the learnings of the failures that you get along the way. So I went out into conventional roles. I did basic jobs. And I learned more about myself and how to interact with people and how to negotiate with people and deal with difficult personalities and pleasant personalities. And I think those are all the things that you eventually learn on the job after years of education. But if you get the exposure to do it along the way, even better, because you'll be more prepared in the role that you'll play after university. I truly believe that university fails on teaching people emotional intelligence and how they can relate to people for a number of different reasons to benefit the purpose of what they're doing in their careers.
It's an interesting comment. I've talked to, I think it was my mum and I were having a conversation, or perhaps a little bit of a debate about the role of university. Right? Is it just to teach the curriculum, which is what's in the textbook, or is it actually to teach the curriculum in the context of the world today? Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's a lot of different opinions, no doubt, on what that is, and certainly one, the professors, when they are looking for grant and research money, they have some different agendas, all good agendas, but where they collide is an interesting where they intersect is an interesting thing to kind of explore. I really like what you were saying, how you learned at such a young age about failure, and that failure wasn't seen as a bad thing. There's a quote that says, it's only failure if you stop. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a powerful thing to learn at such a young age. I really think it's quite a gift, to be honest, because otherwise that inner voice and that inner critic could get really loud. Yes. When things don't work out as planned. And really, honestly, how often does life work out as planned?
Almost never.
Almost never. Or if it does, like in my case, I got to the age of 40, and it was exactly how I planned it, and I was miserable. So I love the opportunity that you had to go out and explore the world first, because not only do I think that it really helped you sort of on a professional level, it absolutely helps you in other areas of your life. So from an emotional intelligence perspective, it's much broader, as you know, much broader than just the context of work. Mm-hmm. So tell us what emotional intelligence is and why it matters. So for those listeners right now who don't really know what we're talking about, why should they care?
Emotional intelligence is foremost, it's a number of personality traits that you carry with you and how you represent yourself to the world. But emotional intelligence is really your ability to understand your own self-awareness and have your toolkit of components that you rely on to be able to negotiate, have empathy, extend to people, and demonstrate with confidence your intuition and your purpose in the world. And so emotional intelligence is that what I call that invisible suit that everyone wears to the office or the workplace or whatever you do, that people don't necessarily anticipate, but definitely dramatically improves and increases your career development, your communication, and your interaction with the people that you work with every day.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Having had a long career in HR, I certainly had the opportunity to witness emotional intelligence at its best and perhaps at its worst. An example that I think about is one time in particular. Unfortunately, I grew up in the tech sector. I say unfortunately just because we know what happened in the tech sector. There was a really massive boom, and there was lots of prosperity, and there was lots of hope, and there was lots of learning, all good things, and it went down just as quickly as it went up. And as a result, in HR, I had to do a lot of layoffs and had a lot of difficult conversations as it related to people in their employment. And there was one time in particular that a manager walked into the room, and the employee clearly knew what was going on because I was there first. It's that really uncomfortable, they know, I know, we're not saying anything yet. The manager comes in and starts a totally inappropriate conversation for the context. Talking about last night's hockey game, where, in a really enthusiastic way, in an attempt to try and lighten the mood. But I'm sharing this example just to really showcase that this is one example of many, and many which you'd be able to give as well, of what emotional intelligence, the importance of it in the context of, a real work sort of situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great example. There's a lot of times where people will act and say certain things, not realizing the impact they have on the room around them. And as a leader, you want to be really intentional on the message that you share. And I often tell individuals and audiences in my keynotes about emotional intelligence that the way you speak, the way you present yourself, the way you address people in the hallway, the way you look in formal and informal settings is being noted all along the way. And so you must represent your intentions at all times, because the people that are looking for mentors and the people who are looking for great leadership and strong feedback and good feedback, positive feedback, you represent that. And so the emotional intelligence and the way you carry and your tone on your messaging is so important, and being mindful of the empathetic situation in the room.
You know what I think is really fun about all of this kind of self-awareness, especially as it relates to emotional intelligence, is how it impacts the person who's doing the learning. While it might be being done in the workplace, how it impacts and improves their home life as well.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
It's remarkable. And I think for me, that's possibly even is just as important as the improvements that they're seeing in the workplace, because we bring our whole self to work.
Yes. One of the key messages I share with my clients in my one-on-one coaching is that the learnings and the awareness that you're going to get from one-on-one coaching as you explore emotional intelligence and develop your career plan is that you're going to realize that those barriers that are stopping you from getting where you want to go in your career are the same barriers that are affecting you in your personal life. So
Absolutely.
Even though career coaching is not psychology, it's not therapy, but there are awakenings and there are realizations that can happen that make you be in tune to the plan for your career and then the plan for yourself.
Absolutely. Love it. So what's one of the awakenings that you've experienced in your life, speaking of awakenings, and how has that sort of defined how you moved forward?
There's been so many in my short life. I'd like to think that 41 is young.
I agree.
It's the new 25.
Being 2 years your elder, I agree.
One of the key awakenings for me as I went into management earlier on in my career and became responsible for teams and individuals was how profound my empathy was going to support me in leading those teams and supporting those individuals. It's always been since grade school that people open up to me and share intimate details about their lives. Now, in a work environment, that's not necessarily something that, is always available or reasonable. It really depends on the person you're with. But those connections and understanding empathetically the holistic viewpoint of the individuals that I was working with and I was leading really helped me to support them better and to give them validation in a way that was meaningful to them. And so those individuals, everyone plays a special role in my memories, in my career, and the learnings that I can put forth to make better connections and better teams going forward.
So while we're talking about teams and everyone playing a special role, I absolutely need to bring into the conversation a special role that you played on a team in high school, I believe.
Back in time now.
But I think, so I think this is really relevant. I think it's relevant because, well, why don't I let you tell the story so the listeners can be brought into the fold, and then let's talk about why it's relevant.
So growing up, athleticism was really important in our family. And funny enough, it was the girls who played boys hockey growing up. And back then there wasn't a lot of opportunity for girls to play girl organized sports in hockey. So from as young as age 7, until college, I was playing boys hockey. And then in CJEP, moved into the women's team in the CJEP level. And what that did was, I think sports is so important for a number of reasons. It teaches collaboration. It teaches how to deal with difficult personalities, to be prepared when things least expectedly come your way, and to develop strength. Because physical activity isn't just about developing your body, but also developing your mental mass. Yeah. And visualization is something that athletes do constantly, and it's something that we need to bring into more of our mainstream everyday focus. As individuals, we must visualize where we're going and what our targets are. And so when I was going through the numerous, I was a goaltender, so I was constantly getting scrapped up and scratched up and taking every shot at the head I could. And then when it came time, finally at my graduation year in high school, they had started a boys hockey team. And it was our first entry into the high school league. And so I was the only girl goaltender on the first year of that organized hockey team. And so that to me was a great way to end the high school years on a high and a personal achievement. But always being also the only girl on the team was very fitting for when I entered the technology world and realizing how few women at that time existed in various roles and leadership roles. And I must say, we've come a long way since then. There are much more women in leadership roles in technology, mentoring women through the various roles and channels.
Absolutely. I always think it's neat looking back to connect some dots. We can't connect dots looking forward, we can only connect them looking back. So, you know, when you're talking about that story, I heard and imagined, you know, an Erin who was, you know, a leader, a trailblazer, courageous, and those continue. Those are attributes and traits that have continued, obviously, to serve you well throughout your life and your career. You talked about mentors, and especially, you know, in terms of women in leadership, especially women in technology leadership, which there are fewer women leaders in technology than other sectors. What advice would you have for a female listener who is looking for a mentor?
Yeah, I get that question a lot actually from mentees, and the way in which people understand how to approach people in upper positions. Now, understanding that mentors don't need to be at upper positions. There's mentors at every level. I believe that, and I try to instill that in everyone I speak to, just as there's mentees at every level. So it's a bit daunting to people to go up to an executive director or executive manager and say, you know, I'd like some advice. And the best way that I find people can engage people, there's a number of ways, but first of all, if it's within your organization, send them an email and invite them to coffee and explain what it is that you're looking to do with your career and why you see them as an excellent person to interact with on some of your questions. 95 or even 99% of people who get an email like that will definitely interact because A, they're flattered that you asked. They're so busy, they don't see themselves in that space as being someone as a mentor. So when you call out to them, it's a definite, you know, communication and relationship builder. Secondly, you want to be in a relaxed environment. You don't want to do things in the boardroom. It doesn't need to be prescribed. It isn't a job interview. You know, you just want to know how to navigate this place. And I must say that if you work in a large corporation, that can be a daunting task, especially for people who are postgraduates. They don't teach you how to network in university. And so there's a sense of hierarchy and there's a sense of formal communication. And I say just break that down. We're all human. We all started out somewhere, and just reaching out. If they're not in your organization, LinkedIn is a great tool to break the ice and ask in the same format, would you mind doing a video chat or a phone call or a coffee in-person meeting, and be prescriptive about what it is that you're intending to do for yourself that you want to get out of that relationship.
Right.
And so those are the key ways that I would approach a mentor and ask for support. And if you get rejected or you get ignored, if you get ignored, try to approach them a second time. But if not, move on, because if they didn't acknowledge it or they haven't acknowledged it and they're too busy, then chances are they might not provide you the right advice. So it's not about you. There's a lot going on in everyone's lives, and I encourage people to reach out to at least 5 people in their network every month and try to connect with them, because the things you will learn out of a quick coffee are remarkable.
It very much is true. And I think that you said it, it's not about you. When people say no, or even if they don't reply or ignore, it's often not about you, it's about them, but we make it about us. And so I love that, you know, the idea of continuing to reach out 5 people a month, I think is an awesome idea. I recently just put a challenge out for people 30 over 30. And that was 30 coffees over 30 days. And quite a challenge to put out there. And the thing about the challenge was, and so it's not quite mentoring per se, but it was networking. May have resulted in some mentoring sort of relationships, but not only were you doing it to actually connect, you were also, the challenges also involved each person bringing one thing that they wanted help with, that they needed help with the most, either in their life or their business. Typically it was business related. And it's amazing what happens when you actually put yourself out there and yes, genuinely connect, and then also be in a position to ask for help. Because I see a lot of women, you know, especially like in the modern woman, thinking that to do everything themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you see as well, and that there's a bit of a resistance to ask for help? Why do you, yeah, so those who aren't watching on Facebook Live, Erin is nodding at me, so those listening can see the yes. So why do you think that is?
I'd like to share something that I tell just about every woman, whether they're a mother and a professional or just a professional. And a professional doesn't mean you wear a suit every day. Whatever your role is, you're a professional. And that is, there is no such thing as superwoman. So give it up. You're not meant to do 50 things at the same time.
Can you please repeat that? Repeat that, please.
There is no such thing as superwoman. You are not meant to do 50,000 things at the same time. You will not get rewarded for that behavior.
It's absolutely, I couldn't emphasize that enough. If there's one thing that I like to share as well, I think we are doing each other a disservice when we call one another supermom. Because that makes us, I see this image of a woman on the outside, how they look on the outside. That's the example of what we see on Instagram, you know, the perfection.
Yes.
And then on the inside is someone just desperately trying, burning a candle at both ends.
Yes. And it's unfortunate that we've allowed ourselves to get here. Society has brought us here. And I don't recall back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when I looked at pulp culture, that the man going to work every day and coming home to his wife was referred to as Superman. And I'm not a gender leader, so don't get me wrong. I'm not splitting hairs on gender, but I think the stigma of where women have grown to, and, you know, yes, we are succeeding, and yes, we are doing more in the world, and we have a fantastic voice. But it doesn't mean that you need to balance family and work in a precarious fashion every day. It shouldn't mean that you sacrifice your sanity and your strength so that you can just be with the rest of the world. It's not fair. There's more resources that are required to support families, whether they're men or women, so that people can be successful in their career and be holistic and whole in their family as well. And I think it's time to disrupt family services and community services and what we think about asking for help. Recently, I was a part of a hackathon run by Elevate in Toronto a couple of weeks ago. And one of the call outs for the challenges for the hackers was connected communities. And what does that mean? And one of the groups actually developed a tool that was simplistically based on Uber and Airbnb, but was all of your childcare needs in your neighborhood. You go online, you say, I need a babysitter for 2 hours, or I need daycare. And there are people who are processed through all the back-end channels and made sure that they're good to be on those sites.
Right.
That can take care of your children, and they live down the block, and they just happen to be retired, and they don't mind, you know, being a daycare for 1 or 2 children a couple times a week. That extension of the normal government-run private daycare process disrupts what we think about where our children should be. Regardless of where you put your children, you want them to be safe. But the ability to kind of extend and disrupt and help mothers and fathers be whole in their lives so that they can be good with their families, we need more of that.
Oh, that's so well said. And what an amazing way to be using technology.
Absolutely.
As a mom of 4 boys, I see technology being used in a less productive way. And so I really love hearing these types of stories when we look out to see how technology is being used in a social capacity, for medical reasons, etc. Because we do certainly hear in the news a lot more about how rates of depression and linked to social media use and that kind of thing. So when it can be used for good, I think it's really something to get behind and to support, because it really does make for better communities. What a great initiative.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, you mentioned that you're 41. You've had a number of, experiences, personal and professional. What's one of the biggest lessons you've learned so far in your life?
I must say that my life lesson has been, through the numerous relationships and people that I've worked with and lived with and learned from, friends and family. I stopped trying to assume I knew people a while ago and just ask the questions to get to know them better. And sometimes those questions are immensely difficult. But the reward is when people actually look retrospectively at themselves and want to give you insight into why they think that way or why they are the way they are, and not just accepting, oh, my boyfriend doesn't do the dishes, for example.
Yeah.
Obtuse kind of example, but why are you that way, and what made you that way? And sometimes we can learn some pretty fundamental, profound things about people and how they learned growing up and why they are who they are today. And some of them are beliefs, and a lot of the times people just do because of observation, and they never questioned what they saw. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really intrigued and really interested in connecting with people and understanding what have you observed and what you know, and how can we change what we think we know. It's always something I'm challenging myself to do, is not take on assumptions and not take on things that I consider, is this normal? And what is normal? And let's disrupt normal, because normal doesn't really exist. There's always new types of living and new types of integration and new types of collaboration. And so there isn't just one way of being. And so understanding people and fundamentally how they got to where they are today. And it always turns back to, how can I help you improve your pathway forward? What can I give back to you? It's always my intention to be a servant in a positive sense of the word, mm-hmm. to support people no matter what.
It's like you really do have to sort of peel back those layers and look inward to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me that you gave that as an answer. I love that answer, but I wasn't surprised only because you talked about when you were little, Erin, you were talking about, the idea of being a psychologist. And so I think it's just so neat when you see, looking back, all of these signs or these dots that are connected as you go through your life. You look at sport, you look at some of your interests and what you want to be when you were younger, how you were parented, and these all come together to create who we are and how we show up in the world. What's one of the scariest things that you've done in your life where you knew it was going to take you in a direction you wanted to go, but was scary as hell?
Starting EQFootprints. Starting my business was the scariest thing I've ever done. It was a chance for me to practice what I believed inside, but didn't really necessarily always share with the world. There's secret dreams, there's secret desires that you hope to be able to fulfill, but you're not quite sure how. So starting EQFootprints as a legitimate company and going out into that scary world of entrepreneurship was definitely one of the scariest things I've ever done.
So kudos to you for doing that. There are many of us in this world, some perhaps who are listening right now, who may have that dream and that wish and that passion for going out and starting something on their own. So with those listeners in mind, what's the first thing that you would suggest that they do to move towards that dream?
The most important thing for me is, if you're alone, find a support group that you can ask questions to and get insights of people who have done it already, so that you can sort of plan out expectations where you might fail, but you would kind of be able to predict it. And so you are going to make a lot of mistakes, but knowing sort of how that road winds really helps you prepare for, okay, I think this is what, my mentor was telling me, or, my peer who's doing the same thing in their entrepreneurial outfit. So getting connected with a bunch of people who are like-minded and doing the same focus is really important. If you're in a relationship and in a family, I'd say the first thing is to get on the foundational agreement level of, this is what I'm aspiring to do. I want to do it with your support. How do we plan this into our lives so that we can both make it work?
Right.
It's so important to communicate and not just assume that your partner is going to take on your dream, because they may not. It's your dream. Why?
Yeah.
Necessarily, they shouldn't necessarily have to take on the dream. It would be hopeful that they support you, but be expectful that they may not. There are a lot of emotions around doing your own thing, the time that it takes away from other activities, being selfish, but rightfully selfish.
Yes.
Other people perceive that and might be jealous or might be undermining, the true nature of why you're doing what you're doing. And in fact, the road of entrepreneurship doesn't always pave in success, but it does teach you a lot of information about yourself on executing a project and collaborating with others who you may have not necessarily engaged with in your job, in your day-to-day job, and being able to ask for support and service from practically strangers, putting yourself out there. There's a huge amount of risk and vulnerability that comes with operating your own business. And so that can be scary for the people observing you. Like, have they gone crazy? What are they doing now? It's about financial trust. It's about, time management and time trust, especially if you have children. And it's about, being connected and respecting each other's goals. And you should have all of those. And another thing that entrepreneurship ultimately, demonstrates is that if you don't have those, then you might be making other decisions along the way, ones that you didn't necessarily know because you weren't putting these new opportunities in front of your relationship.
Right.
So there's a lot of growth in entrepreneurship. And I think everyone, I always say everyone should have a coach. And the other thing I always say is everyone should try to establish some form of a business or service so that they can just live those growing experiences.
There's so much yes to what you just said. One of the things that comes out to me is that I have learned through the journey of entrepreneurship is that it's not what I end up achieving, it's actually who I end up becoming.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had told me that 2 years ago, I would have said, that's bullshit. Why do I want to start a business? Because I want to help women and I want a successful business. And so while those things are part of my definition of success, who I have become and how I've rounded out that definition is massive. And the things that I couldn't anticipate on this journey of entrepreneurship are those personal and very deep and internal shifts that have occurred, which I never would have believed had I not experienced this myself. I am a coach, you know that, let my listeners know that, and I continue to say I will never ever be without a coach or a therapist. I think that everyone yes. can benefit. I don't see a therapist regularly. I know he is there when that is needed, and it speaks to this sense of community. I think to be successful, whatever that looks like in your life, you need a community. We know the expression, it takes a village to raise a child. When does that stop? I don't think we grow up, but I don't think that need to have a community changes at all. The community may change in how that is made up, But that's what you were saying as well, to get a community, to get people around you who have been in that situation before, or who have some expertise, guidance, and support that they can offer you, so that when you do fail, they're there, they're a soft place to land, and to help direct you, support you in whatever way that you need it. And certainly, you know, when I started my own coaching practice, that's absolutely what I did. I found, where do I want to be? And then who's going to help me get there the fastest way possible? Because I'd spent 14 years trying a do-it-yourself approach, which self-help books are fantastic. But wow, that was not a fast path I chose. It was not a fast path when I could have asked for help.
Exactly.
So when you look at your success sort of in your own life, if we look at success sort of, not sort of broadly, I'd like look at success broadly. How do you define success in your own life?
I predominantly, success for me is really about the relationships that I built through my career, and how those mentors and relationships and good feedback. I've received great feedback throughout my career that really guides me on who I am today, and helps, you know, being open and listening to what people tell you is very important if you're going to build yourself forward. And so those have been the extreme learnings and successes that I've gathered along the way. And I believe that if you're in an organization where you're performing a specific role and you want to expand yourself quickly, you must transform every 2 years, if not less. You must change positions or teams or projects. You will grow with the number of interactions that you have and projects you undertake. You won't grow sitting at the same desk for 10 years. It's just not going to happen.
And why does that matter? Why does it matter if what's the risk of not growing? You sit at the same desk for 10 years, same job.
I suspect that there are people who might enjoy the everyday and the same, and you might get a lot of peace from that. I mean, I always speak about, you know, the loveliness of introverts and the benefits of extroverts. And there's a great space for both people and different personalities in an organization. But if you're hungry and you're wondering why you're not getting those promotions, and you're wondering why you're not getting noticed, you're wondering what is it that you're not quite understanding about the dynamics in front of you and the organization around you, the only way you're going to get that information is if you constantly challenge yourself, raise your hand, and say, I want more, I need to do more, different types of work. The same role, if it's in an organization that isn't a change management organization, will not evolve. Hence, you will not evolve. And so the evolution you must seek in other ways. Maybe you seek it outside. The stability of your job is different than, you know, the things that you're learning outside the world. But whether you're in your personal space or your professional space, you need to stretch at times of your life. And so for those hungry professionals that really want to get ahead and understand how things work in the short term, challenge yourself to move around. You know, don't stay in one place. That's the easiest way to get a better understanding of a holistic organization and how they're working and how you can support them better with your skill sets.
I'm sure you say this all the time, as do I, but there is no growth in your comfort zone. So those listening who have not heard that before, you're welcome. And those who continue to hear it, think about, just to consider that and reflect on that sort of in your own life in terms of when you took some element of risk and stepped outside of your comfort zone. If you're thinking about something or doing something different that actually excites you but makes you feel sick at the same time, it's usually a good thing to step into and to explore. Erin, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I definitely don't think I'm the norm. You know, I have 3 jobs. I work 7 days a week, but I'm following my passion. Whether I'm working at the City of Toronto in technology and supporting the community to be a smarter Toronto, or working within my own organization, EQFootprints, or supporting Toronto through the Center for Interpersonal Relationships, and connecting with those psychologists and those therapists in that space to really understand how to help clients better in their career coaching and leadership coaching that I'm offering them. That is a busy schedule, but I don't wish that on anyone. That's my passion, but really to find your own passion, your own intention, and go for it.
Absolutely, go for it. I was talking about how smart Nike, everyone does talk about how smart Nike was when they came up with that slogan, just do it. It just is so applicable to so many aspects of your life. So perhaps you were touching on this just in your last answer. How do you continue to grow and stretch? What do you do yourself?
A key element of growth, I think, is self-care. If you don't give back to yourself first, then you can't successfully help others. So I have practices in my day-to-day life that are important for me to recognize and validate who I am and who I think I want to be. And how am I achieving those goals? Whether it's going to the gym and building my body in a way that nourishes my mind, nourishes my self-esteem, and makes me feel stronger, or meditating before I start my day and really visualizing on what it is I'm expecting to do for myself that day. My daily mantra is, I will help one person today, at least. But my goal is to help at least one person in their lives. So having that intention and going out in the world and not filling it with, how am I going to get through today? How am I going to face my boss today? How am I going to look at that colleague that I don't get along with very well today? I stopped doing that years ago, because I realized that when you infuse your life with positivity, the universe responds. And so I am very much in tune first most to who I am and what I want to give to the world. And then when I walk out that door and onto the sidewalk, I think about all the possibilities of how I can help the world. And that makes me feel very balanced.
It's beautiful what you say, and it reminded me of I was recently at a Tony Robbins event, and there was this wonderful woman, bless her heart, I can't recall her name. She's a 79-year-old stress management specialist, which on the surface sounds kind of boring. I think we all know that it's really important, but as a title, it's like, okay. She is also a stand-up comedian, and she has done an amazing job and created a niche for herself where she is an expert in this area, but she uses those strengths of comedy and expertise and knowledge on stress management and blends them and marries them beautifully together. And so what she was saying, one of the many things that she was saying, and I had a hard time hearing all of it because I was laughing pretty much the entire time I heard her, but she said, what would happen if you woke up every morning and instead of saying, oh my God, I gotta go to work today, what if you woke up and looked at your partner, if you have a partner, or you got to work and the first person you saw at work, you threw your arms up in the air and you said, I'm here. And I realize that we're talking about, she's using humor here, but to make the point of like, what would happen if you just woke up with that different kind of, perspective and mindset of, I get to go to work today. I don't have to go to work today.
Yeah.
And I think the self-care that you talked about, the meditation and the visualization, all are really tangible things to help with that positive mindset, so that as the busyness of life comes at us throughout the day, as the challenges and the really big obstacles and life-altering events that inevitably do occur in our lives that are out of our control, that we've created this space within ourselves to build resilience. So
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, some of what it is that you do to create that space for yourself that allows you to work 7 days a week following your passion, that you do find those times throughout the day to create that positive starting place.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have to say that, resilience is a good word. And how do we build resilience within our life? We use it a lot. It's becoming a very on-trend word. And I think it's important. for us to recognize not just are we resilient, but how are we resilient? And it's not for nothing that I really value my friendships. The people that will listen to me, whether I'm happy or whether I'm sad, and just want to connect with me on a real level. And when we fact check with them and we do reality checking with our trusted friends, we build resilience and we build our strength to be okay to move forward in good and difficult situations. One of the funny parts of my daily habit, which is why I can work 7 days a week, is because I build in all these other ways of connecting with my friends. Is I do coffee FaceTime in the morning with my friends in Montreal. And I have a lot of great friends in Toronto who get to see me FaceTime, like real time, but I'll have coffee with my girlfriends in the morning before I start my day, just to connect, just to say hi, and just to say, you're doing amazing and I love you. And having that connection all the time present in your life helps build the resilient bank and helps you move forward with the strength that knowing there are people out there that care about you.
What a beautiful way to start each day. And it really is, isn't it, these daily practices, or these regular, almost daily practices that serve to build that muscle, if I dare call it a muscle of resilience. I think we, certainly in the coaching and self-help world, it's easy to look and use the working out and fitness and health as a point of reference all the time, because it's something that you can see. But I liken it to someone who wants to lose 40 pounds. You don't lose 40 pounds by being a weekend warrior at the gym. You lose 40 pounds by consistently changing, consistently doing something each and every day, being mindful of those things. Absolutely. And so when we talk about, connection with others and resilience and building it, it's a regular practice. And I really think that, the habits that you engage in each day are what determines your ultimate success in life. So those listening who may think that, oh, wow, where do I start with habits? We've got just a few minutes left before I want to try and, wrap things up. So this will be kind of my final question about habits. Tell me what you think about habits and how important they are and how to start a good daily ritual.
I'm a fan of writing on the wall. So I get those.
That's awesome. Don't tell my kids.
I know. All the things your mom told you not to do when you were younger. I love it. I love getting, just get that sticky paper that you can wash off the writing on and throw it up on a wall somewhere in your house. And get a bunch because you're going to go nuts. What I love to do in terms of habits is talk about, you write down every key word that describes what you do in the day. So I drive the car, I eat, I sleep, I go to work, I talk to my mom for an hour. What are those habits that you're consistently doing weekly or daily? And then on your other side of the paper, you're going to talk about what are the things that you have been trying to do? What are the things that you want to achieve? What are the passions that you've been putting off or not necessarily donating enough time towards? And what you're going to realize is the list of things that you do in your day that's habit forming consistently day in and day out is quite long compared to your passions, which is fine. You can have one big dream or you can have several dreams and passions, but you're actually doing more things that divert your attention away from where you're going. And it's quite interesting. Recently in this exercise with one of my peers, they wrote something down like sitting in traffic for an hour and a half every day and being at a job that's not fulfilling. So how can you get that time back? And what it came down to was, if I move to a role that's closer to my house, then I'm going to get that time back to focus my energy on my passion.
And what a great way and great exercise to wrap things up. And so thank you for sharing that. Listeners, give that a go and send me an email and let me know how it goes for you. And I will absolutely share that with Erin. Erin, very quickly, I want to thank you for all of your time. How can people reach you? Got 30 seconds left. How can people reach you?
You can reach me on all social media at EQFootprints and on my website, www.eqfootprints.com.
Thank you so much for all of your time, Erin. Thank you to all of my loyal listeners, and always a big kiss, hug, and shout out to my producer, Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio. To all of you loyal listeners, thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Until next Tuesday at this time, be brave, be bold, and be happy. Have a beautiful, amazing week, my friends. Goodbye.